Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today as we dive deep into another fascinating story from the world of rare coins, where tiny details and hidden errors can transform what looks like an ordinary piece of pocket change into a multimillion-dollar treasure. And today our focus is on the incredible 1989 D. Lincoln 1-cent coin that has shocked collectors and investors alike because of its combination of errors and mistakes that catapult its value to an astonishing $24 million, making it one of the most sought-after rarities in numismatic history. And what makes this story so exciting is not only the fact that we are talking about a simple penny struck in Denver in 1989, but also how the specific production mistakes, die varieties, striking anomalies, and the endless possibilities for unique characteristics all come together to make something that transcends the ordinary and becomes a legendary prize. So let's take a long and detailed journey through every aspect of this coin, the circumstances that could have produced it, and the many ways collectors interpret its significance. Because to understand how a 1989 D cent could be worth such mind-blowing money, we have to go back to how these coins were minted, the minting process itself, the errors that can occur, the rarity that results, and how the numismatic community builds value around such discoveries. And as we all know, the Lincoln Cent series is one of the most beloved and widely collected coin series in the world, with billions struck every year since 1909. Yet within those billions are tiny anomalies that make certain coins stand out, and the Denver Mint in 1989 was no stranger to high volume production, which means the more coins produced, the more chances for mistakes, misalignments, double strikes, wrong planches, die cracks, clipped planches, off-center strikes, broad strikes, and all the other fascinating errors that collectors dream of finding in their pocket change. And when we talk specifically about the 1989 D1 cent that became valued at $24 million, we are not just talking about one little nick or scratch. We are talking about a perfect storm of multiple errors that likely combined to create something one of a kind. For instance, many reports suggest that this coin could have been struck on the wrong planchet, possibly a copper-based planchet that wasn't supposed to be used in 1989, since by that time cents were supposed to be made primarily of copper-plated zinc. Yet if a leftover blank from earlier decades somehow slipped into the Denver Mint presses, it would create a coin that weighed differently, rang differently when tested, and displayed characteristics that made experts take notice. And on top of that, it's possible the coin was struck with a misaligned die, creating doubling on Lincoln's portrait, on the date, and on the mint mark. And if you have dramatic doubling visible without magnification, then the rarity shoots through the roof, because collectors know that such strong doubling is a hallmark of high-value varieties. And imagine combining that doubling with a misstruck planchet, or even a transitional error where a coin gets struck using specifications from an earlier era. Suddenly you're not just looking at a minor curiosity, but at a multimillion-dollar marvel. And when you think about the level of fascination this coin creates, it's easy to see why collectors bid it up to astronomical levels, because rarity alone isn't enough. There also has to be a story, there has to be eye appeal, and there has to be an element of impossibility that makes people shake their heads and say, how did this ever happen? And the 1989 D $24 million cent has all of that. The story of the wrong planchet, the story of doubled dies, the possibility of die cracks running across Lincoln's face like scars of history, the possibility of a repunched mint mark where the D of Denver was struck more than once by hand as dies were being prepared in that era. And then you add on striking pressure anomalies that cause weakness on one side and extra thickness on the other, making this coin a literal textbook of minting mistakes all rolled into one. And beyond the physical features, you also have to consider the context, because 1989 was a year when billions of cents were made, most of them ordinary, most of them forgettable. And yet in the vast sea of common coins emerges this one piece that defies the odds, and because of that, its story becomes larger than life, almost mythical. And in the numismatic world, stories drive value just as much as rarity, because collectors are not just buying metal, they are buying history, imagination, and the dream that maybe one day they too could stumble across a similar treasure in their pocket change or coin jar at home. And think about it. A coin that cost the government 1 cent to make in 1989 now being worth $24 million. That's the kind of transformation that ignites imaginations across the globe and keeps the coin collecting hobby alive and thriving. People love the possibility that something ordinary can become extraordinary if you just know what to look for. And that's why the details matter so much. Details like whether the lettering around the rim shows signs of doubling, whether the steps on the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse are fully struck or show unusual distortions, whether the rim itself is broad and incomplete, or whether there are clash marks from dies striking each other without a planchet in between, leaving ghostly impressions on the fields of the coin. All of these details fuel discussion and speculation. All of them add layers of intrigue to the 1989 cent, and all of them explain how a collector community can build consensus around a value as shocking as $24 million, because ultimately value comes from what someone is willing to pay, and in the auction world when multiple deep-pocketed collectors chase after a once-in-a-lifetime piece, prices climb to the stratosphere, and that's exactly what happened here. So as we imagine holding this coin in our hand, it's worth thinking about the other possibilities that could also make it unique. Like if the coin had an off-metal composition, maybe struck on a dime planchet, creating a thinner and smaller appearance. Or maybe struck on a foreign planchet intended for another country's coinage, since the US Mint has historically struck coins for other nations, and every now and then those blanks get mixed in and used by accident. That kind of mistake alone would be enough to create a legendary rarity, and when paired with visible doubling or misaligned dies, the combination is like hitting the numismatic jackpot. And that is why when collectors see or hear about such a coin, they can't help but dream and speculate, because rarity in coins is never just about one single error, but about the interplay of multiple factors that make something impossible to replicate. And once authentication is confirmed by grading services, once it's slabbed and certified as genuine, then it enters the realm of legend, and the sky becomes the limit for its price. And this 1989 cent with its $24 million tag is a shining example of that reality. And what's even more fascinating is that coins like this inspire people to start searching their own change, their rolls of pennies from the bank, their old jars tucked away in closets, because everyone hopes to find their own life-changing discovery. And that is the magic of numismatics. It's not just about coins, it's about dreams, possibilities, history, and luck, all wrapped into tiny pieces of metal that we handle every day without a second thought. So when you hear about a penny worth millions, like this 1989 cent, remember that it's the culmination of history, rarity, error, and storytelling, and that is what makes it not only a collector's item but a cultural icon in its own right. And the discussions will go on for years, with experts debating whether the doubling is a result of a hub doubling or machine doubling, whether the planchet truly was a leftover copper blank from 1982 or earlier, whether the strike pressure anomalies were accidental or deliberate mint adjustments. And every angle adds another layer to the legend. But no matter how you slice it, this coin stands as a testament to the fact that errors are treasures, that mistakes can be miracles, and that sometimes the smallest details can change the world of collecting forever. And as long as stories like this exist, the dream of finding fortune in your pocket change will never die. And so the 1989 Lincoln cent, with its $24 million valuation, remains one of the most exciting and inspirational examples of how extraordinary things can come from ordinary places, and why coin collecting continues to captivate hearts and minds across the globe with every new discovery and every new legend born from the presses of history. Next, 2002 1 cent USA coin, where everyday change can turn into life-changing fortune. And today's story is one of those incredible tales that truly captures the imagination of collectors, investors, and casual hobbyists alike, because we are going to explore the legendary case of the 2002 Lincoln 1 cent that has been valued at a staggering $10 million, all because of a unique combination of errors, mistakes, and minting anomalies that turned an ordinary coin struck at the Denver Mint into one of the most valuable pennies in existence. And as always, the magic lies in the details, because coins are like tiny pieces of history, miniature works of art. And every once in a while they carry within them mistakes that transform them into treasures, and the 2002 D penny is a perfect example of how a confluence of factors can push a coin from being worth only 1 cent to being worth more than most houses, cars, or even entire estates. And the fascinating thing about this particular coin is that on the surface it looks like just another modern Lincoln cent struck on a copper-plated zinc planchette, billions of which were produced that year. But closer examination revealed extraordinary characteristics that stunned experts and collectors alike, leading to astronomical valuations and fierce competition whenever the coin is discussed or comes up for sale. And to truly understand why this coin is worth $10 million, we need to explore the world of minting errors in detail, because every coin passes through a highly mechanical process involving planches, dies, striking pressure, alignment, and minting machinery. And in that process a tiny slip can create something unique and irreplaceable. And in the case of the 2002 D cent, multiple possibilities have been suggested, including wrong planchette errors, double die varieties, misaligned dies, die clashes, broad strikes, off-center strikes, and even transitional planchette mistakes where the wrong metal composition was used. And all of these play into the narrative that makes this coin so valuable. And one of the first possibilities is that the coin may have been struck on a leftover copper planchette rather than the intended zinc-based planchette, which would make it heavier and give it a distinct appearance under magnification. And if you consider that collectors prize transitional errors from 1982, when the US Mint changed compositions from copper to zinc, finding a coin decades later with a similar anomaly is like uncovering a hidden relic of minting history. And then there are the doubling errors, which are among the most dramatic and desirable for collectors, because a doubled die can make features like the date, the mint mark D, or even Lincoln's portrait appear doubled to the naked eye, creating a coin that is immediately eye-catching and extraordinarily rare. And if you combine strong doubling with a wrong planchette error, then the rarity multiplies exponentially, because not only do you have an incorrect metal composition, but you also have a striking anomaly that shows up visibly in the design. And these kinds of double die coins already fetch thousands or millions of dollars at auction in less extreme cases, so you can imagine how the 2002 D cent with its possible doubling could reach astronomical valuations like 10 million. And then we have to think about other striking mistakes that could make this coin unique, such as die cracks that run across Lincoln's portrait, creating lines or raised ridges that shouldn't be there, die chips that create blobs of extra metal in odd places like in Lincoln's here or in the letters of Liberty, rim errors where the collar die fails to fully shape the coin, leading to broad edges, and off-center strikes where part of the design is missing because the planchette wasn't properly centered during the strike. And collectors love off-center strikes, especially dramatic ones where large parts of the design are missing yet the date and mint mark remain visible, because that combination makes it possible to attribute the coin correctly while still showing off the dramatic error. And in the case of the 2002 D penny, some experts have speculated that it may have shown a combination of an off-center strike along with other anomalies, which would only increase its rarity and desirability. And another exciting possibility is that the coin could have been struck on a foreign planchette, since the US Mint has a long history of producing coinage for other countries, and occasionally blanks intended for other coins slip into the presses and get struck with US designs, creating wildly valuable off-metal errors. And if the 2002 D cent turned out to be struck on a foreign blank with a different size, weight, or metal composition, that would absolutely explain why collectors were willing to push the value into the multi-million-dollar range. And then of course we have to consider the role of eye appeal, because collectors are not only concerned with the type of error but also how visually dramatic it is. And a coin that looks spectacularly different, one that tells its story immediately when you look at it, always commands more attention and more money. And so if this 2002 D cent has bold doubling, dramatic striking anomalies, and visible errors that even non-collectors can recognize, then it becomes a centerpiece for any collection. And when certified and authenticated by a major grading service, it moves from being just a curiosity to being a legend. And legends are what drive the numismatic market to levels most people can't believe. And the story of this coin's rise to a $10 million valuation also demonstrates how much passion, competition, and imagination exists in the collecting world because value is ultimately driven by what collectors are willing to pay, and when wealthy enthusiasts battle over a once-in-a-lifetime piece, the price can skyrocket, and that's exactly what makes this coin so famous, because it's not just a coin, it's a dream. It's proof that miracles happen in minting, and it's evidence that errors can become treasures. And when you consider how many billions of 2002 cents were made, the odds of finding such a one-of-a-kind error are astronomical, which only adds to the legend, because people love stories of the impossible, and the more impossible it seems, the higher the fascination and the greater the value. And now, let's think about the layers of speculation, because numismatists and collectors often spend years debating the origins of such coins, whether the doubling is true hub doubling or machine doubling, whether the off-metal composition was intentional or a complete accident, whether the errors all occurred in one strike or across multiple strikes. And these debates fuel even more interest, because every new theory adds to the mystery, and mystery sells, because collectors aren't just buying a coin, they're buying a piece of history and a story they can tell. And the story of a penny worth $10 million is one that people will tell for generations to come, and it also inspires ordinary people to start looking through their change, searching bank rolls, checking jars of pennies tucked away in their homes, all hoping to stumble upon their own treasure. And that's one of the most magical aspects of coin collecting. The fact that something so small and ordinary can suddenly transform into something extraordinary and priceless. And when people hear about the 2002 penny worth 10 million, they begin to believe that it's possible for anyone to find something life-changing in their pocket, and that keeps the hobby alive and thriving and fuels the hunt for more discoveries. And as we consider this coin's journey, it's also important to note that the grading services play a huge role, because authentication and certification turn speculation into reality, and once the coin is encapsulated and declared genuine, its story becomes locked in history forever, and that certainty is what allows collectors to spend millions confidently knowing that what they are buying is not only rare but truly one of a kind. And so the 2002 Lincoln cent sits at the intersection of history, rarity, error, and imagination, valued at $10 million, not just because of its metal and design, but because of everything it represents about the world of coin collecting and the dreams of those who chase it. And while skeptics may wonder how a coin could ever be worth that much, the truth is that value in collectibles is never about logic. It's about rarity, story, and passion, and this coin has all of those in abundance, and that's why it continues to captivate hearts, minds, and imaginations across the globe. And if you hold one of these rare treasures in your hand, you are not just holding metal, you are holding history, you are holding a mistake that became a miracle, and you are holding the dream of every collector who ever searched through change, hoping to strike it rich. Last 1995 1 cent USA coin. Today, as we dive into another fascinating story from the world of rare coins and hidden treasures, where tiny mistakes, minting mishaps, and unusual anomalies transform what looks like an ordinary piece of pocket change into something worth life-changing amounts of money. And today's focus is on one of the most extraordinary rarities ever associated with the Lincoln cent series, the legendary 1995 Lincoln 1 cent that has been valued at an unbelievable $20 million because of its extraordinary errors, its once-in-a-lifetime characteristics, and the combination of possibilities that make it so valuable to collectors and investors alike. And if you have ever wondered how a simple penny struck at the Denver Mint in 1995 could achieve such fame and value, then stay with us, because we are going to unravel every detail of the minting process, every possibility of error, every theory that experts and collectors have put forward, and every reason why this coin continues to fascinate and inspire so many people across the globe. Because coin collecting has always been about the thrill of discovery, the joy of finding history in your hand, and the dream that something so small and ordinary could become a fortune. And this coin is the embodiment of that dream made real. So let's start by looking at the context of the 1995 Lincoln cent, because 1995 was already a famous year for double-die cents, especially from the Philadelphia Mint, where dramatic doubling on the Obverse, particularly on Liberty and Iron God We Trust, made those coins some of the most famous modern errors ever, and yet, when it comes to Denver mintages, collectors rarely expected anything extraordinary because the Denver Mint usually produced high volumes with relatively fewer dramatic doubled dies reported, and so when in 1995, D emerged with extraordinary anomalies, the numismatic community was stunned because not only was it rare, but it also had characteristics that went far beyond the normal. Doubled dies of the year, and what makes this particular coin so valuable are the layers of mistakes and errors that combine in ways most collectors could only dream of, and some of those errors include the possibility of it being struck on the wrong planchet. For example, a copper planchet left over from the pre-1983 era before the US Mint switched to zinc cores with copper plating, which would make the coin heavier and immediately distinguishable from normal cents of the era, and if that alone were true, it would already make the coin a valuable transitional error. But what makes this $20 million 1995 D even more extraordinary is that it doesn't stop there, because reports suggest the coin also exhibits bold doubling on the obverse, which could mean that Lincoln's profile, the date, and even the D mint mark show strong doubled features visible to the naked eye, and dramatic doubling is among the most coveted types of errors because it is rare, it is undeniable, and it makes a coin instantly recognizable even to beginners. And when you combine doubling with the possibility of a wrong planchet, then you already have two significant anomalies layered together, and then we must add the possibility of die cracks, die chips, or rim cuts, which occur when the dies used to strike coins begin to fail or break and leave raised metal lines or blobs on the coin, and these features create uniqueness within uniqueness because every die crack is different, and when you add dramatic cracks across Lincoln's portrait or through the date, you get a coin that tells the story of its creation in metal scars. And then there is the possibility of misaligned die strikes where the obverse and reverse don't line up perfectly, or where part of the design is shifted, and when such an error happens it can create unusual distortions in the lettering, the portrait, or the Lincoln Memorial reverse, which only adds to the drama of the coin's appearance. And let's not forget about off-center strikes, which are among the most popular errors with collectors, especially when the coin is off-center enough to be visually striking but still retains the full date and mint mark, because that way you know exactly what you're looking at, and yet you have a dramatic reminder of the minting mishap. And if the 1995 D $20 million cent had such an off-center strike along with doubling and a wrong planchet, then it would become not just a rare coin but an impossible rarity, something that could almost never happen again. And that is exactly why collectors are willing to pay such astronomical sums, because they know they are competing for a once-in-a-lifetime piece of history. And we can go even further into the possibilities, because the Denver Mint, in 1995, like all US mints, has struck coins for other countries in the past, and there is always a chance that foreign planchets were present in the production facility, which sometimes get struck with US designs by mistake, creating wildly valuable off-metal errors. And if the 1995 D cent were struck on a foreign planchet intended for another country's coinage, then that would create a third or fourth layer of rarity stacked onto the already remarkable doubling and striking anomalies. And then you add the possibility of die clashes where the dies strike each other without a planchet in between and transfer part of the design onto the opposite die, leaving ghostly outlines of Lincoln's bust on the reverse or parts of the memorial on the obverse. And now you have a coin that is practically a showcase of errors all rolled into one, and it's the combination of these possibilities that makes the coin so legendary, because individually each type of error can be valuable, but together they become the stuff of myth. And that is exactly what we see with this 1995 D $20 million cent, a coin that represents the perfect storm of minting mistakes. And when we think about why collectors place such incredible value on it, we must consider the psychology of collecting, because it's not just about the physical metal, it's about the story, the uniqueness, and the chance to own something no one else can. And in a world where billions of coins were struck in 1995, this one coin stands out like a diamond in the rough, a 1 in a billion anomaly, a piece that tells a story unlike any other. And when grading services authenticate it and encapsulate it as genuine, its legend is sealed forever, which is why auctions can push its value higher and higher, because deep-pocketed collectors know they may never get another chance to own such a marvel. And beyond the financial side, this coin also inspires countless people to look through their own change, to check their jars of pennies, to search bank rolls, because everyone dreams of finding their own miracle penny that could change their life overnight. And that's the beauty of numismatics, the blending of history, chance, art, and luck that keeps the hobby alive and vibrant. And if you hold a coin like the 1995 $20 million penny, you are not just holding metal, you are holding a story, a mistake turned into a miracle, a reminder that even in a world of mass production, sometimes the machines falter in just the right way to create beauty and value that endures forever. And it is that lesson that makes this coin so fascinating, so valuable, and so legendary, because it is not just a penny, it is a piece of history worth $20 million and a symbol of how the smallest objects can sometimes carry the greatest treasures.